Concerning Liberty, by Sterling Locke. When men surrender their inheritance of liberty for the idle promise of safety, they barter away that which is eternal for that which is fleeting. It is the most ancient bargain of tyrants, that power, once given, shall secure them from every ill. Yet history instructs us that no chains, whether wrought of iron or law, ever produced safety, only servitude. The voice of authority speaks always of necessity, of crisis, of urgency, that the people may be softened into obedience. But necessity is the tyrant's plea, and urgency the tool by which liberty is extinguished. When the citizen consents that his labor and his property are no longer his own, but the fodder of collective decree, he has yielded the very substance of his freedom. For property is not mere soil, coin, or dwelling. It is the embodiment of one's toil, the fruit of one's mind and sweat. Without the right to hold and to keep that which one has made, a man is reduced to a beast of burden, yoked to masters who claim ownership of his person by ownership of his product. It matters not whether the despot wears a crown, a uniform, or the guise of a party banner. The principle is ever the same. When the will of the collective is placed above the right of the individual, slavery is declared under noble pretense. Every form of collectivism, whether robed in the language of equality, fraternity, or national greatness, delivers the same verdict. You do not own yourself. You belong to the group. And if you belong to the group, you belong to none but its rulers. Shall we not remember the wisdom of our forebears, who held that liberty is the birthright of every soul, and that governments, if they are to exist at all, exist only to safeguard that right, not to extinguish it? Yet, what do we see in our day but factions and parties of every hue and persuasion competing not to secure liberty, but to manage its diminishment? They speak of protection while enacting plunder, of fairness while enforcing bondage, of progress while erecting walls of control. A people who accept such lies become partners in their own undoing. Each decree that commands their property to another's use, each law that supplants choice with compulsion, each regulation that binds industry with red tape instead of free exchange, each is a thread in the shroud of liberty. And when the cloth is finished, it will cover a coffin. Therefore, let us resolve to speak plainly of first principles. 1. Liberty is the right to live uncoerced, to think and to act within the sphere of one's conscience, so long as no violence is done to another. 2. Property is the extension of liberty into the world. It is the right to possess the fruit of one's labor and the work of one's mind. Without property, liberty is an illusion. 3. Collectivism in all its guises proclaims that the individual is but a tool of the group. It is slavery dressed in banners and slogans. 4. Security purchased by submission is but a disguise for domination. The free man may suffer dangers, but he suffers them as a man. The slave suffers at once the lash and the fear. Citizens, awaken to these truths. The creeping hand of authority will never be sated. It will take until there is nothing left but submission, unless the people remember that their dignity lies not in what they are given, but in what they may keep, create, and defend. The testimony of history. If the present generation would not heed the admonitions of reason, then let it at least consult the graveyard of nations. For history speaks more plainly than any philosopher. Liberty, once surrendered, is not easily reclaimed, and the chains that men accept for safety soon prove heavier than the perils they feared. The last century, though clothed in modern industry and science, offered no escape from this ancient pattern. Consider those nations that proclaimed equality and collective glory while shackling their citizens to the state. Under the banners of fraternity and justice, millions were enslaved and slaughtered. One empire declared that the workers of the world would own all things in common. In truth, they owned nothing, not even their own hands. The fruit of their labor was seized, their farms collectivized, their speech policed. Dissent was not merely punished, but exterminated. Famines, gulags, and secret police were the gifts of that false promise. The people, told they were free from exploitation, found themselves slaves to the cruelest exploiters of all those who wielded the state itself. Another nation proclaimed national greatness as its creed, demanding that the citizen submerge himself into the will of the race and the state. Property was no longer one's own, but the instrument of the collective. Industry was bent to war. Children indoctrinated. Neighbors denounced. The state became all. The individual, nothing. And when the machinery of tyranny was complete, the world witnessed slaughter on a scale scarcely imagined, before proving that when liberty dies, humanity itself is imperiled. From Rome to Athens, from the monarchies of old to the collectivist tyrannies of our own age, the story is one. Liberty is lost when the people are seduced by promises. Whether the promise is bread, equality, greatness, or security, the result is the same: the surrender of property, the silencing of conscience, the enslavement of man. If we will not learn from their example, then we are destined to repeat their downfall. For the conditions that breed tyranny are not foreign to us. They are perennial. Ambitious rulers, fearful citizens, factions hungering for plunder, mobs demanding bread. These are not relics of the past, but shadows ever present in the affairs of men. And the only safeguard against them is the eternal principle of liberty, that every man owns himself, his labor, and the fruit thereof, and that no ruler, no mob, no collective has any rightful claim against him. On the parties and factions of our time, Sterling Locke. If the ruins of past empires are not enough to awaken the conscience, then let us turn our eyes upon the present. For though the garments of authority have changed, its heart beats ever the same. The factions of our day, each adorned with lofty names, each professing devotion to the people, are but rival claimants to the same throne, the dominion of power over liberty. The merchants of security. There are those who declare that man is too frail to live unguarded, that perils abound and calamity lurks behind every corner. These proclaim themselves guardians, demanding our obedience in exchange for protection. They would regulate every act, oversee every trade, and monitor every thought, so that no danger, real or imagined, may slip past their watch. But the protection they offer is an illusion, and the price they demand is freedom itself. They construct a cage and call it safety, forgetting that the man who dwells in a cage is not safe, but already defeated. What wolf is more to be feared than the jailer who claims to be your friend? The Peddlers of Equality. Another faction flatters the people with the promise of equal shares, declaring that no man should prosper more than another. They call upon the state to seize from those who produce and bestow upon those who demand. They speak the language of justice, but they practice the art of plunder. Equality under law, this is noble. Equality of chains, this is tyranny. For to command that no man may rise above his neighbor is to command that no man may freely keep the fruit of his labor. Property thus dissolves, ambition withers, and liberty perishes. The people, once industrious, become supplicants, waiting for the state to distribute its dole. The peddlers of equality achieve not justice but dependence, and dependence is slavery in finer clothing. The priests of nation and glory. There are others who appeal to pride, declaring that the individual must surrender to the greatness of the whole. They speak of the nation, the race, the culture, as if these were divine beings to whom men must sacrifice their freedom. They demand obedience in the name of unity, conformity in the name of strength. What is this but the idol worship of politics? They erect a collective deity and require all to bow. In such a system, the citizen is not a person but a resource. his property mere fuel for the engines of power, his life expendable in the rituals of war and conquest. Liberty is not merely diminished but scorned, for individuality itself is branded treason. The administrators of plenty. Another faction promises abundance through the wisdom of planners and managers. They assure the people that the market cannot be trusted, that free men cannot govern their own affairs, and that only centralized design will provide prosperity. They entangle industry in edicts, bind commerce with decrees, and suffocate innovation with regulation. And yet, what has ever been the fruit of such administration? Scarcity, where there might have been plenty; stagnation, where there might have been growth; corruption, where there might have been integrity. The planners, no matter their claims of expertise, cannot escape the truth that no committee can replace the ingenuity of a free man working for his own betterment. In seeking to guarantee prosperity, they extinguish the very liberty that produces it. Each of these factions, though opposed in rhetoric, is united in practice. One demands obedience for safety, another for equality, another for glory, another for prosperity. But all demand obedience. All deny that man owns himself. All declare that property may be seized, liberty curtailed, conscience policed, if only the state commands it. The parties quarrel, but only as vultures quarrel over the same carcass. Each promises to govern better, to spend more wisely, to regulate more fairly, to command more justly. But none dares question the throne itself. Their rivalry is but a spectacle to distract the people, while liberty is carved away, slice by slice, until nothing remains but the husk of citizenship. Obedience without choice, labor without reward, existence without dignity. It must also be confessed that these factions thrive not solely by their own ambition, but by the complicity of the people. For what tyrant ever rose without the aid of those willing to be deceived? The citizens who clamor for subsidies, who beg for protection, who envy their neighbors' prosperity, these are the midwives of their own chains. When a people forsake the discipline of liberty for the indulgence of dependency, they become clay in the hands of rulers. The parties need only speak the words security, equality, unity, or prosperity, and the people yield. Thus are free men transformed into clients of the state, wards of authority, children awaiting their ration. The common thread that runs through every faction and party of our day, the presumption that man cannot be trusted with liberty, and therefore must be ruled. This presumption is the root of all tyranny, ancient and modern. It declares that property is not sacred, that labor is not one's own, that conscience is not sovereign. It enthrones the collective above the individual, and by doing so, it enthrones the rulers above the ruled. It matters not what colors the parties wear, nor what slogans they shout. Their essence is the same: the trading of liberty for promises and the betrayal of both.